Welcome to DPI Connections for January. If you don't know me, my name is Jake Hollnagel and I work on Educator Effectiveness at DPI. This month's theme is student growth. Student growth looks at where a student started out and measures how much they grew, regardless of whether they are proficient or not. This concept is used in many ways. For example, the special education team is considering how to incorporate a measure of student growth in the rollout of RDA, Results-Driven Accountability. RDA is an initiative squarely focused on improving reading achievement for all students with IEPs. And using a growth measure is especially important for this group of students who are often behind their peers in terms of simply proficiency. As educators, you know how important it is to look at student improvement or academic growth over the course of a year. If we only look at a student's current proficiency rate, we'd be leaving out a drastic amount of information. It's the difference between a photograph and video. In today's video, we are going to explore the many ways to measure growth, including student growth percentiles, value-added growth models, and simple gain models. We then connect student growth data to the SLO process. But first, let's explore student growth in terms of the achievement gap. Let's look at our black-white achievement gap in mathematics on the NAEP. Here we see 5 years of very large, unrelenting gaps. If we're going to close the gap, the growth of the underperforming group, in this case the black students, is going to have to be much higher than the growth of the white students. If black students always gain the same amount from year to year as white students, there will always be a gap in the group's achievement. Looking at where the gap is now, let's project into the future. Remember, a score of 250 on this scale is proficient and 215 is basic. First, let's assume that nothing changes. If we do nothing to address the achievement gap or student growth, then by 2017 we will have achieved nothing. Actually, we may even fall behind for both black and white students, falling below basic for black students and dropping below proficient for white students. Now, let's assume that we start using student growth data and strategies to close the gap. Let's assume that the white students maintain their achievement levels. How aggressive would we have to be for black students to catch up to white students in proficiency by 2017? Wisconsin would have to cut the gap by 1/3 every year until 2017 to close the gap. Wisconsin would not only have to reverse the negative growth trend for black students, but have extremely high growth consistently across years. Some schools in Wisconsin are seeing the kind of growth among minority students that's needed to close the gap. But achieving this level of student growth in order to close the gap is going to be extremely difficult. But let's imagine what would it mean if we actually did close the gap. The impact would be profound. If we close the gap, we'd have at least 25,000 more students proficient in math each year. There are schools in Wisconsin that are seeing high growth among their minority students, so we know that closing the gap is possible. Looking at growth data allows educators to pinpoint not only how much growth is required for certain students, but also allows them to track how far they've progressed. Now, in the next portion, Laura Pinsino will be introducing you to the range of student growth data that DPI has available for educators. I appreciate your time. Thank you.